The issue is never the evidence, it's the way you interpret the evidence. You guys notice in the scientists, everyone can make statistics say what they want to say, right? You can choose the studies you want to say if you already have a preconceived bias of what you want to argue. That's the same way with God. If you already have a disposition that rejects the idea of God, no matter what evidence you're presented with, you're going to come to the conclusion that there is no God. If God never reveals himself to us, we can never know anything about him. Because all other religions, and this is what makes Christianity different from religion, all other religions claim that there is a path or a way to know the divine, right? There's a way to enlightenment, there's a way to access the divine, there's a way to encounter the divine. However, Christianity is claiming that God is so transcendent, there is no way you can access the divine. Apart from, the key word is revelation. Our whole Christian faith is built on the concept of revelation. It's not us trying to get to know God or trying to figure out God. It's not us trying to think of God. It's what God has already revealed to us. And so when we talk about revelation, what we are saying is that God condescends to us because we can never know God on our own. This is why there are limitations with philosophy, apologetics, or whatever it is outside of revelation. Like if an unbeliever left to his own logic, even if that person's a genius, they can only know so much or think so much about God, but they cannot really know God fully or even accurately. This is why there's so many different interpretations and perceptions of who God is, and there's no way to have a uniform understanding of God apart from God revealing himself to us. General revelation is a disclosure of God that is available to all human beings through the created universe and the inner nature of human beings. So this theologian says general revelation is seen through creation, so the created universe, and the inner man. What is outside of us, what is inside of us. Those two things testify to God in some way. Here's another definition from another theologian. General revelation is a self-disclosure of God to all rational human beings, a revelation that comes through natural creation and through the makeup of the human creature. You notice the two things that he also emphasizes. He makes it clear this is to rational beings who can now look at creation and inner man to get to some conclusions about God. So you start to see these are the two areas where God is revealing himself to everybody through creation and through yourself. Yourself inside of you, your soul in some way testifies to God. Here's the final definition. General revelation is God's communication of himself to all persons, to all times, and in all places. So this is not limited to Western society. This is not limited to the people in the Bible. This is not limited to people that go to church. These things that we're going to talk about are given to everybody. Now, why is it given to everybody? It's because God is a just God. It goes back to one of his attributes. And he cannot judge people for something they're not accountable for. Does that make sense? You can't judge people if they never had any knowledge at all of something. You can't say you're guilty of speeding if you never let them know the speed limit. And so God cannot judge people unless they have something to be accountable to. And so in order to allow them to have accountability to something, God has to disclose something about himself that people can reject. What this means that unbelief to God is not an ignorance issue, it's a rebellion issue. It's not that people don't know God. That's what we're going to learn today. Because if that was the case, God is not fair for judging people who just don't know him. God judges people not because that they don't know him, it's because they do know him through general revelation, but even through general revelation, they don't want him. Like, this should have led to this, but the problem is they don't even want more of God. They've seen enough of God through general revelation, they reject the God they see in general revelation. And so here's the principle about general revelation. It is sufficient to condemn, but insufficient to save. General revelation is enough evidence of God to condemn people for rejecting him, but it is not going to give you enough evidence for God to save you. So it's sufficient to condemn you, but it's insufficient to save you. In other words, you can't just look at the stars and get to the gospel about Jesus. You got to get to special revelation somehow. However, if you look at the stars, that is enough to show you there is a God. Therefore, if you reject God, even just looking at the stars is sufficient to condemn you. So it is not a general revelation, not a way to save people, it's to make people accountable to who God already is. Creation itself, if you actually study it with an unbiased mind, it should all show the fingertips of God in some way, right? The only problem is that you're saying, well, why do a lot of scientists or people are atheists today? It's not because there's a lack of evidence in that field. It's because of the lens by which they're looking at the evidence. The issue is never the evidence, it's the way you interpret the evidence. You guys notice in the sciences, everyone can make statistics say what they want to say, right? You can choose the studies you want to say if you already have a preconceived bias of what you want to argue. That's the same way with God. If you already have a disposition that rejects the idea of God, no matter what evidence you're presented with, you're going to come to the conclusion that there is no God. For example, I don't believe Harry Potter is real. I think that's rational, but there might be some people that do. So no matter how much evidence you give me, if you take me to the Harry Potter world, you show me magic and all these things, I'm not going to ever conclude it's Harry Potter's real. I'm going to have some kind of explanation for it. Even if hypothetically I was taken to Harry Potter's world, if I don't have that possibility in my mind, then the evidence will never lead me to that conclusion. So if people don't even have the possibility of God in their mind, if they already pre-rejected God, then the evidences for God will never lead them to God. This is when you guys talk to unbelievers, you got to understand their psyche in this way. If they don't have that as an option, you're not going to get them to that option no matter how much evidence you bring. If someone is into conspiracy theories and says, you know, we're all in the matrix, this is all unreal, no matter how much, if you pinch them with it, they're not going to be convinced if that is their presupposition, right? And so that's the same way. So yes, creation is a part of general revelation. If you don't have presupposition, if you don't have a bias, everything God created is supposed to testify to God.